What is up, ladies and gents? Welcome back. I'm Rick, and today we're going to take a look at the Gaia channel and their mini-doc on psychedelics and consciousness. Let me state this from the beginning. I hate Gaia and everything they stand for. So when I came across this vid, I was like, yeah, it's time to take down the big dogs. So I got out a pair of pliers and a blowtorch, and I was like, you hear me talking, Gaia? I'm gonna get medieval on that ass. So today we're gonna break down what Gaia is and why I feel it can be dangerous for the people that are coming to Gaia for the yoga and the spiritual guidance and getting pulled into the conspiracy rabbit hole never to be seen again. The psychedelic community is my people. We're working to get plant medicines decriminalized. We share our stories of healing and recovery and connecting with nature and reaching the highest levels of spiritual bliss and human consciousness. And there are many folks that I know in this community that are fully on board with Gaia, or at least the type of new age snake oil and conspiracy cockfarts that Gaia is peddling. And believe me, it is something I struggle with, because it's not my place to tell people what to believe. But at the same time, I don't want members of my community that I care about getting hemmed up and lost forever in this crap. For those of you that aren't familiar with Gaia, here's my best breakdown of the general conspiratorial ideas and New Age spirituality that it promotes. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And through the power of the mind and the age-old techniques of breathing and meditation, we have the capacity to harness universal energy, take control of our destiny, bend matter to our will, and achieve all we desire. These secret teachings are not for everyone. Only the purest of souls that have opened their eyes to the true nature of reality will receive this wisdom, while the masses of sheeple live in a prison of social constructs and conformity as slaves to the system. But not you. You have been chosen. And because you have been selected as the universe's golden child, you are allowed to peer into a reality that others are not privy to. But I warn you, my adept seeker of cosmic light, there are forces of darkness that do not want you to find this truth and become spiritually aware. There is an all-pervasive they out there, and they don't want you to become enlightened. Because when people are spiritually awakened, the message spreads. And for centuries now, the world's governments and major religions and secret societies and financial institutions have all been working in unison in a concerted effort to suppress this knowledge and keep us distracted with material possessions and mass consumerism and propaganda, because they know that when we become spiritually aware, we are harder to control, and when we wake up, we see through the veil of lies and refuse to be slaves to the system. Okay, I know that was a long rant, but that basically is the main theme behind Gaia, and the fact that psychedelics so easily meshed in with their narrative is the only reason they made this documentary at all. So in a nutshell, it's education and spiritual guidance for peeps out there that have not trained their brains how to think critically. And I used to be into this new age crap. I remember it hit all the little spots of my brain that told me I was really onto something here, that I was becoming smarter and wiser. And it's not a coincidence that the same time in my life I was going through all this new age stuff was when I was also believing in conspiracy theories. It took me discovering what real education is to realize that I had been tricked. It makes you feel like you're experiencing true reality. Flat earthers feel like they're doing science, but if those same flat earthers actually applied themselves and studied physics and learned some math, they would cease to be flat earthers. Simple as that. And the same thing pretty much goes for the spiritual matters. The same way conspiracy theories feel like the truth, when you're caught up in this new age stuff, it feels like spiritual fulfillment and enlightenment. Looking back on it now, it was like I was feeding my soul a pure junk food diet. And then finding things like Kung Fu and Zen meditation was like discovering fresh fruits and veggies and whole grains. The advice I give people today when it comes to all things New Age and conspiracy theory is to think of it like Mountain Dew and mayonnaise. None is probably best. A little ain't gonna kill ya, but if you make it the food that you are living off of, you are gonna be one seriously malnourished individual. You dig? Good. Now let's take a look at some clips. So if I covered every single misleading claim that Gaia made in this 30-minute video, we would be here for the next 10 hours. So for now, let's just check out this 30 seconds.
Here, where some scientists and philosophers believe we have lost the true reality, and in turn, become products of our environment and culture. And it wasn't until scientific study partnered with ancient rituals that they discovered that there might be a way to reconnect the soul and the mind more quickly and intimately. But are these just escapist tools? Or could they actually be a cure for the common human issue on this planet? The sleeping mind.
Number one, they are constantly bombarding people with very scientific and historical looking imagery, done in some very well produced and expensive flashy motion computer graphics, while simultaneously implying that all of modern science and academia and all the psychologists and doctors and professors and philosophers all back up their bogus claims. At best, it's a small handful of cranks and quacks. Number two, the power of suggestion. This is why the lady at the drive-thru is always asking you if you want to supersize it, because the corporate bean counters have figured out that some folks out there can't say no, and other folks out there don't even try. Go watch Ancient Aliens. The narrator of that show has it down to a science. Could it be that the Eiffel Tower is actually an antenna meant to communicate with the Galactic Federation mothership, as some ancient astro douches propose? The psychological reason they do this is that people are highly suggestible, and for some folks out there, I guess it makes them feel like they drew these conclusions all by themselves. And the last one is, they know that the people that they want viewing this stuff are not gonna fact check any of it. You know when a conspiracy weirdo tells you to do your own research, but what they really mean is to watch the same YouTube vids that they watched and to swallow it whole the same way they did and to not give it a second thought just like they didn't. And Gaia knows damn well that the people that really want to believe this stuff are not the kick the tires and lift the hood kind of crowd. You know what I mean? For instance, let's back up just a few seconds ago to when they showed this ancient Greek relief carving of two women holding what appears to be mushrooms. What they fail to mention is that the common consensus amongst archaeologists and historians is that these women are holding flowers. It's possibly the opium poppy flower, but definitely flowers. Hence the name of the carving, the exaltation of the flower. They do the exact same thing later on when they show the Hindu goddess Lakshmi holding what appears to be mushrooms, when every other depiction of this goddess clearly shows her holding two lotus flowers. And I'm pretty sure this isn't an ancient artifact. I think you can get this thing on Etsy. This one was so dumb that Gaia does kind of try to smooth it over, first by claiming that some people debate these to be everyday objects, and then they toss a couple scholars under the bus, and they cap the whole thing off by making an even more ridiculous and easily debunkable bogus claim.
Some have debated these images as misidentified everyday objects. But believers of the deep psychedelic and shamanic roots of almost every ancient culture and religion say that you'll even find references in the Bible. The King James Version of Exodus 16:14 gives a description of manna that seems very similar to mushrooms in shape and location, and even the time of day that they appear.
This is all 5 seconds of Googling that Gaia knows their viewers won't do, but nobody that has any bit of expertise in this matter thinks that manna from heaven was a mushroom, let alone a magic mushroom. Why would God want thousands of Hebrews lost in the desert tripping balls on mushrooms like it's Burning Man? He's God. He could have provided any nutrition source to these people he wanted, and he makes their only food source magic mushrooms? That might be fun for a day or two, but this old Hebrew would be out there in the desert looking for a God that knew how to conjure up an omelet and a decent cup of coffee. Next, we're going to take a look at a psychiatrist named Stanislav Gra. This dude claims to have been good buddies with Albert Hoffman, the famed Swiss chemist that first dropped acid. Mr. Gra has said some highly questionable and unscientific things over the years, but he really outdoes himself here.
Czech psychiatrist Stanislav Gra believed that the psychic opening allowed experiences to resurface that go all the way back to birth and even pre-birth trauma. So he was willingly among the first to experiment with LSD to investigate what it does to the mind.
As someone that's still dealing with the symptoms of PTSD to this day, the fact that there are idiots out there seeking attention by saying that they experienced past life trauma or remember experiencing trauma while in the womb is just sad. I mean, how drab is your existence on this planet that you need to spice things up by imagining that you suffered trauma in a past life? Please stop doing that.
Then I met Albert Hoffman quite a few times. He loved nature. He was taking small dosages of LSD in his garden until his death. And he said, I see the hand of God there. And if anybody thinks that the atoms can do it all by themselves, they just don't know what they are talking about.
I scoured the entirety of the internet looking for this quote about the atoms by Albert Hoffman, and surprise, surprise, we gotta take Mr. Graf's word for it here. But even if he did say it, it's a pretty silly thing to say. Like every spinning atom in the universe needs God to come and just help it along in some way.
The consciousness is the product of the neurophysiological processes in the brain, and when the body goes, the brain goes, and there goes consciousness. And it was as simple as that. Now I see it very differently. I realize we have absolutely no proof that consciousness is generated in the brain. Very, very few people realize this, including scientists.
There are a handful of scientists that propose that consciousness does not come from the brain and instead all around us, like radio waves or electromagnetic fields, and that our brain filters it out somehow. But the common consensus amongst neuroscientists is that consciousness comes from the brain. Now, is it possible that the science on this could change someday in the future? Sure. But to talk about it like that radical paradigm shift has already taken place is downright greasy. This is Gaia's bread and butter. And Gaia made sure to give ample speaking time to the undisputed king of pseudoscientific bozos. This guy is a legend in the realm of unproven and disproven claims going all the way back to the 90s. Behold, Mr. Atlantis himself, the flat earther of ancient archaeology.
So that nation states act as though it's kind of normal to have wars. Go drop bombs on people, send in the troops. It's a kind of normal thing to do. It's not a normal thing to do at all. It's a completely abnormal, aberrant, psychopathic thing to do. We shouldn't be going out there and killing other people for some sort of weird national goal. It's a terrible, terrible mistake that we're making. And now the toys of war have become so big and so huge that they actually pose a threat to the whole future of humanity.
Graham Hancock's approach has been truly original. This guy spread a conspiracy theory so old that it predates writing itself by about 8,000 years. It was actually a brilliant plan, and beautifully executed, but make no mistake, he is a turd in the historical punch bowl. But we'll let old Graham here finish pontificating his way to an early retirement.
The position that modern societies have taken on psychedelics, we've demonized these substances, we've made them illegal, we've subjected people to harsh prison sentences if they're found in possession of psychedelics. This is a terrible error that is being made in modern Western society. We are losing contact with our fundamental roots by doing that.
I'm sorry, man. I'm an enthusiast of psychedelic culture, and there is serious peace and healing to be found in these plant medicines. But even I am not so foolish as to think that plant medicines can solve the problems of the world. I mean, it would basically have to start at the top with the world's powerful and influential and wealthy people. And guess what? Those people already have access to an endless supply of any psychedelic substance they want, and I don't see the world getting any better. Quite the contrary, in fact. I don't believe that psychedelics can end the world's greed, but I easily see the world's greed ending psychedelics, and we're already seeing this. The people that are truly suffering are the poor and the people that can't afford health care, and every day psychedelics become more expensive and out of reach to those people. Mr. Hancock here may be able to spend tens of thousands of dollars flying to South America to go spend some time in the jungle with a curandero, but there are millions of people out there that are struggling both financially and with mental health issues, and they will never get to know what it's like to experience the healing power of this medicine. All right, ladies and gents, we got a couple more topics to cover, and then we're gonna call it a day. Let's roll the next clip.
Mescaline comes from the peyote and huachuma cactus and is used in many Native American rituals. The Huichol mothers of Jalisco, Mexico would introduce peyote through breast milk and by chewing off bits and feeding them to their children. Even the Spanish chronicler, Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, reports that among the Chichimeca and Toltec, peyote was being used at least 2,000 years before the European explorers arrived.
Okay, so that clip I tossed in just because I find it kind of amusing that I can say that I actually learned something from this documentary. I'm telling you, of all the bogus BS in this video, that's the only factual thing I found that I was able to look into and was like, huh, that's an interesting bit of psychedelic history I didn't know about. There's actually a really cool article I found that details the role that women played in these peyote ceremonies. I put it down in the description if any of you want to check it out. And son of a gun, I can say that I learned something from the Gaia channel. However, there's a couple times in this video when they look at this period of history when Mexico and South America was being invaded by the Spaniards, and they kind of imply that all that oppression and rape and theft of their land was an effort to keep the rest of the world from finding out about psychedelics. They never once mention the slavery or the indiscriminate slaughter of women and kids, or the centuries-long systematic theft of oil, tin, copper, sugar, gold, silver, coffee beans, bananas. See, all that was a clever ruse. Really, it was about keeping that whole psychedelic thing on the down low. You know, conquistador stuff.
The power of psychedelic plants for perceiving higher patterns and seeing through rhetoric led to a desperate reaction by superpowers, shutting down the collective memory of traditional indigenous practices and cutting off the public from legal use. While these age-old plants, with a safe and ceremonial history going back many thousands of years and no evidence to prove physiological harm, are in Schedule 1 lockdown. Is it a war on drugs or a war on the mind?
And this is where Gaia royally sharts in the sheets of history with their god-awful take on the war on drugs. They start off, as I had said, kind of implying that the Spanish conquistadors weren't there to steal and oppress and rape the locals out of existence, but really they were there to keep the clamp down on ayahuasca and things like that. And they go straight from insinuating that to implying that the war on drugs is somehow a continuation of that very same effort.
The Olmec, Toltec, and Aztec imagery shows that the Americas once had a rich history of mushroom appreciation before the European settlers and missionaries resisted their use. Whatever the conquistadors of the New World were so afraid of seems to still be present as we fast forward to the end of the 1960s. The revival of psychedelic appreciation among young adults began affecting the national narrative, and anti-drug propaganda was beginning to lose its effectiveness. How would the world deal with this new problem?
The war on drugs was kicked off by Richard Nixon in the early 70s as a way of targeting his perceived political enemies of the day, mainly the anti-war protest movement and the Black Panther movement. Don't believe me? Well, here it is in the words of one of Richard Nixon's aides himself, a guy that helped put this policy into place.
He said, quote, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people." You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
And by the time Ronald Reagan was running the ball downfield, there was no more war. So it became mainly about locking people up, primarily people of color. And then we got President Bill Clinton and his 3 strikes laws and tough on crime policies, which got so many people locked up that the private sector needed to step in to pick up some of the slack, giving us the prison industrial complex. Here's Huey from Boondocks to explain that.
Tell me what you know about that. Tell me what you think about that.
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
Did you just say what I was trying to say, but smarter? I like this little...
The war on drugs has been some horrible racist BS that has ruined countless lives over 4+ decades. But according to Gaia, it was all about keeping people from freeing their minds.
That's the real reason they're considered dangerous. You know, as Terence said, psychedelics make you have funny ideas. But funny ideas are dangerous ideas, you know. So that's the reason psychedelics are prohibited, because they encourage you to think for yourself.
I know it's a documentary about psychedelics, so naturally Gaia is going to remain focused on those substances in particular. But what do you think they're implying when they ask, was it a war on drugs or was it a war on the mind? They're implying that the war on drugs has been to keep people from the enlightenment of psychedelic plants. And as I've just demonstrated, it very much wasn't. And let's just take a look real quick at some of the clips that Gaia decided to use to depict this harassment by law enforcement. And tell me if you noticed the thing that all these people they're about to show have in common. First, we got these 2 fine kids here getting harassed by the cops for freeing their minds with a bit of the reefer. We got this dude getting marched up to the courthouse by the police, probably for selling the message of psychedelic peace and unity. And we got these 2 goofballs getting busted, obviously for selling shamanism to the local kids out in front of this ice cream shop. Alright folks, I think that's where we're gonna leave it for today, but thank you for dropping by. Look, I want the message of psychedelics to get out there to the public. I want all those people that are out there suffering with mental health issues and substance abuse problems to find the same peace and healing that I've found. But I just don't want it getting out there like this. Alright y'all, peace out. We'll see you next time. Happy holidays.